It's such an awesome new tool to be able to do a million different things with. But what it comes down to is, what is the relationship with your team? And can they say they have someone on their side that is kind of their guy or their gal that they can talk to if they have a problem with parking, or if they have some other additional seats that they need for the game or need to change out their seats? AI can only do so much to be able to enhance the sales experience. But as far as the fan experience goes, AI can do very little to be able to make that better. And so there's still training that's going to need to be involved, especially if a team wants that relationship with their fans. You do a lot of other things with AI, but when you're really getting down to it, I think that AI can help us be better human thinkers if we apply it properly.
And that's the key there, if we apply it properly.
Yes.
That's the crux though, isn't it? It's how humans take that part forward.
Well, there's the AI is using things to be able to email people and generate more quality leads for the staffs that they have, but they still need to be able to have the skills to be able to handle those leads. And it becomes more of a challenge for them to be able to justify training. They said, look, you need to train your people because you've already invested in enhancing the leads that you're getting. You don't want to leave those on the table and do a bad job with leads that you've already invested more in.
Hello, welcome to another episode of The Future of Learning. I'm Andy Howie, Director of Open Elms, and in this series we explore how organizations are navigating the tension between technological acceleration and human capability development. Today, we're exploring what happens when you work in an industry that has historically underinvested in developing its people, where budgets flow to athletes, not staff, and where you can't throw money at problems. However, when money is not freely available, this can provide opportunity for innovation. Scarcity often creates remarkable design discipline. My guest is Bill Guertin, who spent 25 years training people in the sports industry. Alongside Doug Quinn, a former NFL executive, he's learned something most corporate L&D ignores: people don't retain everything in one session. Yet, we keep designing training as if they will. 2-day workshops, the hour e-learning modules, one and done events that disappear from memory within weeks. Now, Bill's been forced to think differently, not because of pedagogical theory, but because of practical constraint, limited budgets, resistance to technology, a workforce that expects in-person connection. And now the AI question: how do you use it responsibly without it becoming a crutch? Now, what's emerged from those constraints is an approach that solves problems billion-pound platforms can't crack. Actual retention, genuine skill application, and engagement that lasts beyond the first week. So today, what can scarcity teach us about better learning design? Why does starting in person matter for virtual success? And how do you invest in people when the culture doesn't naturally prioritize it? Bill, welcome to the Future of Learning.
Thank you very much, Andy. I'm excited to hear what my answers are going to be. I would listen to this myself.
I mean, I've set it up for you. I've teed it right in there. So, we'll crack on straight on, Bill. Okay, so let's get straight into the crux of it. So, 25 years training people in sports. Now, for those outside this world, what's fundamentally different about how sports organizations approach learning and development from your perspective?
Well, they're not necessarily investing in a lot of the kinds of things that larger Fortune 500 types of companies generally invest in: longer term training development, paths for career success. Those aren't really the things that they're interested in. They're far more interested in the athletes, what they need to be able to progress. In fact, there have been many other things that have been added to athlete performance. Mental health is now kind of the newest frontier with athletes and performance. But certainly trainers, athletic trainers have been in vogue for a very long time, and spending millions of dollars to be able to enhance the performance of those athletes. Now, I would argue that the people behind the scenes, those who sell the product that they have on the field, should be the elite athletes of the business side of things, and as such, should have the same kind of opportunity to be able to excel using tools that are available to us to be able to do that. But in the real world we live in, currently, it's just not the case.
Okay. So why do you think sports lag behind the business world in technological adoption? Is it
I
purely
believe
budget or is it something cultural?
well, much of it has to do with team performance and wins and losses. Many of the owners and those who are in charge of sales departments of companies believe that the only way in which to sell tickets is to be able to have a winning team on the field. And so no one should come if there's a bad team. Well, that's a pretty short-sighted response, simply because not every team is a winning team. Only one person in the NFL can win the Super Bowl, and everybody else has to fend for what's left. And so what you have is this thirst for success first, because when you're successful, tickets sell magically. If you're not, and if you've had multiple years of lacks of success, you have an individual team that has a problem filling the stadium. And so we have to get creative in figuring out how to actually sell those tickets proactively to people who may not have been to a stadium or to a basketball court before, to be able to try it for the first time. And there's a price barrier in many cases, and that's why salespeople are needed to be able to justify that price and to be able to suggest things that make the most sense for the situation that they find themselves in. So many teams for a very long time have just counted on wins to sell tickets, but it's simply a short-sighted way to which to look at them.
And are you seeing a change in that method of adoption? And are you seeing anything different, or is it still the same old, no, success will breed? I mean, look, take, for example, I mean, this conversation could go off in any direction, but like this, I think it's the Dallas Cowboys, I think, are probably one of the richest sports brands in the world. It's got to be either not number one or right up there.
It's top five, yeah.
They have not had success in terms of, Super Bowls, even championships, for a number of years now, but they're still able to generate a lot of money. Now, is that because of, so that's not about success, but they're obviously doing something right there. So what's their key, do you think, in that respect?
Well, there are several things that the Cowboys do and many others do to be able to fill the stadiums when their teams are not performing well. One of which is to make sure that the guest experience is as high of quality as it can be, particularly in the suites and the club areas, places that are the higher and more expensive seats in the house. Make sure that you absolutely feel like you are king of the hill when you are there, and that you're treated royally, that you have all the amenities that are possible. Many people use sports tickets for entertaining their clients. And so what we'd want to be sure of, if you were the Dallas Cowboys, is that all of the things in the suites and the skyboxes are taken care of, so that it is a seamless, almost a 4-star, 5-star restaurant kind of experience, rather than simply going to a football game, so that there's more to experience than simply the game itself. Many teams have installed things like halls of fame within their hallways, and so you can kind of go through and look and see at some of the Cowboys' history through the years, and some interactive displays, some hands-on things that have been created. The Pittsburgh Penguins of the NHL have decided to put together very immersive, interactive displays that are all electronic, where you put in a couple of answers and you find out what the answer is, or maybe create your own hockey gear, where you come in and you can push some buttons and your face will end up being on a guy who's playing hockey with the gear that you've selected for him. Just some really fun things for people of all ages, not just children. But it becomes an immersive experience rather than simply what happens on the field. And in fact, in many cases, what happens on the field becomes secondary. And that's really where sports needs to be. There needs to be an immersive experience, understanding that what we're selling is not a win or a loss. It's the experience that people have. It's the camaraderie that happens when a church group brings their people out for fellowship. It's the individual connection that you make with family members when you're there, and so on.
We're gonna lean towards an L&D spin on this in a minute, but I'm gonna ask you one more question on this. So what we've been talking about there is immersive experience, with in terms of the Cowboys, making it very much like a 5-star VIP experience where you're just like, wow, I'm king of the hill for the day, etc. But does that model not kind of then price out the average working class supporter who's been following these teams all their lives, and like they can no longer really afford to even go to the stadiums anymore because those experiences are just way over the budgets that they can afford or their families could even anticipate affording. And so you're actually creating experiences for a select few rather than the people who were actually built this thing in the first place. Is that fair?
Absolutely true, Andy. The great example is the New York Yankees. Building the stadium 10 years ago, they priced almost everyone out of the market because they felt as though they could, because they were the New York Yankees. And they repriced things almost immediately to make sure that it was somewhat more realistic. But yet, even at that more realistic price, it became an average family could not go to a game. A family of four for parking, the tickets, a hot dog, and a soda apiece was over $500 US.
Yikes.
And it is out of reach for many. And so that's why some of the other minor league clubs and some other fan-friendly or family-friendly sorts of teams have done well. For example, in New York, the Brooklyn Cyclones, which is a member of the minor leagues within Major League Sports, are actually owned by the New York Mets, or they're an affiliate of the New York Mets, draw very well, but would have ticket prices 10 times or less than what you would spend at a Yankees game. And so it becomes a family-friendly, budget-friendly option for the game of baseball. And minor league baseball here in the States is about as good as anyone in creating an environment of family fun, unlike anyone else in the world, I believe, in terms of sports entertainment.
Well, that's nice. Is the quality of baseball as good though? That's the question.
Well, for purists, they would say, well, it's not quite the New York Mets, but I could probably put up with it. It is not a circus, or it's not a
Yeah.
of errors or anything that's gone on.
Yeah.
Because they really are. These are people that have been, and so these guys are working their tails off to be able to make that rise to the. And so there is very competitive baseball that's played, but in the minor leagues, it's much more secondary to the fan experience. In fact, many of the people who go to a game in Brooklyn don't know any of the players. They don't go because they want to see their favorite star, because their favorite star is playing over at Citi Field, the Mets.
Yeah.
What they want to do is see the Mets of tomorrow. And that's how a lot of those are branded when people are really interested in the quality of the game.
Yeah. Nice spin. Okay. Yeah, I fear I could go on all day about sport. I am a massive sports fan, so I've got to be careful here. I've got to bring it back. I've got to rein it in a little bit here.
Center.
So we've got to bring this back now, I think, to the things that you've been doing. So let's talk about, let's concentrate on this, the 25 years of training. What are the things that you've been doing in that 25 years? What are the things that stand out the most in terms of the training you've been trying to do, and the people you've been trying to reach, and the methods you've been trying to adopt? And then let's try and bring it up to today. So let's start there.
You bet. When I first began, I was in radio, actually. I was a broadcast guy. I sold airtime in a local market here just south of where I live in Chicago. And I was really happy within that industry. I trained my salespeople. I was actually part owner of a station for a time and really enjoyed it. And really, radio was in my blood. And then I saw this, and I don't know if you're familiar with this.
Oh, the old iPod.
That's right. When I saw this in the early 2000s, I said, local radio is dead. Why would anyone listen to me on local radio when you can get 1,000 songs in your pocket? Now, I was wrong, because local radio is still thriving and doing very, very well. But it forced me to look outside myself and saying, what could I be doing differently? And so I really set my sights on becoming an expert trainer and speaker. And when speakers begin, they start by being a generalist. And so if someone were to ask you, say, well, do you train on customer service? And I said, well, sure, I train on customer service. And so you put it together and you learn about customer service, and then you present the deal. Someone says, do you do team building? Sure, I do team building. So you become this generalist speaker until you find the niche that really fits you and that you feel comfortable with. And I found that in sports. I was doing a customer service session for a South suburban group that was welcoming the one of the major golf tournaments to their area. They wanted to be sure that people that were visiting were all treated well. And a gentleman came up to me that was wearing a Chicago White Sox jacket from Major League Baseball. And I said, okay, it's kind of a guy. So he hands me his card, and happened to be a guy named Tom Sheridan, who was the director of ticket sales for the White Sox. And he said, hey, Bill, we could really use a guy with your energy and spirit training our sales staff. There are a few guys like you that go around the country and train ticket sales staffs. And for me, that was the moment. I had no idea that that was even a thing.
Yeah.
And so that became my quest to make sure that I was the next whoever that is in ticket sales. And it took a couple of years to find a team that was willing to take a risk, but it just so happened that the owner of the Chicago White Sox also is the owner of the Chicago Bulls of the NBA. And so the two of them talk a lot in their sales departments, and they share best practices. And so the Bulls actually called out of the blue and said, hey, we're looking for a new person to train our sales staff. It's a 3-day gig. We want to be able to train this and this and this. We will give you some of the materials we would like you to incorporate in that, but we need somebody to be able to train it. And he said, what would you charge for that? And so I shot them a number, and it was pretty low, but I wanted to get the job. And they said, okay, you're hired. And I hung up the phone and I said, oh crap, what do I do now? And so I had 3 months, fortunately, to be able to gather my thoughts and my elements. And so I knew how to train. The fundamentals of sales are not as different as you might think in sports as it is in anything else. There are some elements of discovery. There is the opportunity that you see a connection between your product and their problem, and you become the solution. And we won't go into all of that, but I mean, the bottom line was I was all ready to go, got there, knocked it out for 3 days. And after a while, I said, man, this is really fun. And so now I've had the good fortune to work with over 100 different sports teams in the US, Canada, and Mexico. Hope to be able to expand across the pond if I can in some way. And perhaps somebody's watching now that would like to give me that opportunity. But I have found it to be an incredibly rewarding opportunity for me to be able to affect hundreds and even thousands now of people. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say there was a point at which I felt like I was missing the mark. Because as you said in the opening, I was a one and done kind of a guy. And then what I found was that things began to leak out, that I brought a lot of information. In fact, sometimes too much information at the start. And it becomes a challenge to be able to exercise all of those activities at one time, because you lose that. There's a Ebbinghaus from 120 years ago, the Ebbinghaus curve of forgetfulness, states that only in a few short weeks, 90+% of what you learn is lost. And it isn't because of anything the trainer does, it's because of the method in which it's delivered. And so I looked into virtual training with my partner, Doug, who you mentioned at the onset, to be able to multiply myself in rather than a 3-day program, a multiple week program using the concept of micro-learning, smaller than 10-minute lessons on video, spaced out over the period of 8 to 10 weeks, so that people could take that lesson and utilize it right away, so that learning could be used and stored. And what we found is that the individuals who were involved in that were able to adopt these new habits of success much sooner, because they were able to use them right away. And as we've gone through all of this processes, what we've actually found is that the combination of a single day of live training reinforced by this 8-week or 10-week program of spaced repetition has really done a great job of cementing those new habits of success with the people we're working with.
Before we continue, a quick thank you from our sponsor, OpenElms Learning Generator. With just a text prompt or document, AI instantly builds a full professional course, complete with video presenters, quizzes, animations, and voiceovers in any language. You can edit everything online and export it as e-learning, a PowerPoint or video. You can even export it as a podcast or video game experience. The best part? You can try it free for 14 days and see how you can use this special agentic AI system to transform your training at openelms.ai. Back to the show.
So give me some example of results that worked based on that model. Like, can you give some like practical examples of like, so I think how you've explained it there, it's a simple concept to follow. I believe that you meet them. What you're saying is you bring a group together, you do some training with them, and on the back of that training, whether it be a 1-day session or a 2-day session, whatever it be, you give them 8 to 10 weeks worth of bite-sized videos at the beginning of every week that they then watch and then they apply. Do the same thing the next week and do the same thing the next week, and they do that for 8 to 10 weeks. And you're saying that at the back of that 10 weeks plus the 2 days they did the training with you, they then had a much better retention rate of the things that you're trying to train them. Is that fair?
Absolutely. It's exactly right. The adaptation level for the lessons that I'm learning is exponentially better. In fact, I've had people that have told me as a general manager of a minor league team, they said, we're getting year 2 results out of our year 1 sales reps through your training, which is an incredible thing to be able to say because our turnover rate in sports is very high. It's about 17 months that the turnover, the churn of the sales staff is very high, mainly because they don't see success in that first year and they become discouraged and look somewhere else. And so what I feel like we're doing is actually elevating the success rate and the ability of people to actually stay in a career that they love and be able to see monetary reasons to stay other than simply they love the team or they love sports.
Yeah. Okay. So that all makes sense. So obviously that's dependent then on bringing groups of people together, right? To begin with. So how does the model work with that? Because that's just a question, but can the model work without bringing people together, like physically? Can it still work without that physical element?
Absolutely. That's when we started. When we began the company 8 years ago, ISBI 360 was only virtual. And we had a single program, Sales 101. And the program itself actually has 3 different elements to it. It does have the videos, but there are 2 other parts to it. One is that you actually have to record yourself on your phone doing the lesson that you just learned. So there's a video role play exercise that you must do every single week to be able to show people that not only did you learn what was on not only did you watch it and with the videos, but you can actually do it now. You can actually do it in practice. And then there's a third element, which we were very iffy on at the very beginning, but we found is one of the most impactful things is that we get a weekly coaching group. It's a group coaching opportunity with an executive from sports that may or may not be in their particular sport. We may have some people from hockey and basketball whose cohort happens to be with an expert or one of their coaches from Major League Baseball, who goes through the week by week lessons with them, answers questions that they have, and essentially become a mentor to them. And these are people that I have had the pleasure of getting to know from my training years that have a heart for service. They have a heart for continuing to train. They may have been elevated to a different level within the company, but they still love that one-on-one helping people get better. And so this allows them to be able to do that and gives these young people who are taking the training the chance to actually meet with someone outside of their own sport and get a new perspective on things. It's been one of the most impactful things we've done.
So essentially, what I'm hearing there, though, then is that as with many models of learning, but certainly the more successful models of learning, depends again on community. Essentially, you have to have a community that underpins it, that's pulling in the same direction. Otherwise, it's not going to work, right? So now this is important because we'll move on to technology a little bit. Because obviously, the model you've been training people for a long time, working with a myriad of large organizations, mainly sporting organizations. I appreciate it's broader than that, but we've mentioned many sporting organizations. So you've seen some great results, as you say, from this model that we've worked with these organizations over many years and increased the capacities of what the staff are able to do. Now, I must touch on something very, very quickly. At the beginning, I kind of said that, budget constraints, etc. Now, what we've been talking about so far are fairly major sporting brands, right? So I think it would be remiss of me to not kind of bring that up in terms of the audience who would be like, well, hang on a minute. How could he be working with budget constraints and coming up with design principles around scarcity of resources when you're dealing with, in some cases, billion-dollar industries? Can you address that just slightly so we can see where that
I think again, without being without having a spy inside each of those organizations and knowing what's actually said around the budget table, I think what ends up happening is when a problem is identified, there is typically more of an urgency to solve that problem. Houston Texans, for example, of the NFL, may have had a lousy season a couple of years ago. And so they look inside and they say, how can we improve that season from last season? And despite who we hire in the draft or who we get in the draft or who we trade for, how can we fill the stadium? And so the managers will get together. They'll look at the pricing strategies that they have for the club, but then they have to have some sort of method by which their sales reps will improve. And so that's the time in which most organizations look to be able to do some things to train their staff. We tend to be on the backside of emergencies rather than proactively addressing what really needs to happen, and that's the development of their people long term. It becomes more of a necessity, a got to have rather than a nice to have. The individual teams that do training consistently, year in and year out, no matter what the team is performing, actually perform better financially internally. But not all the teams have really gotten onto that bandwagon yet. They've just chosen to do as little as they can and spend as little as they can to be able to fill the stadiums. And frankly, I work better with teams that are underperforming than I do with teams that are doing really well. A colleague of mine went into the Cleveland Cavaliers several years ago when LeBron James came back to Cleveland to play in the NBA. And his opening statement to the group that he was training was, LeBron James is going to make very lousy salespeople out of all of you, because it'll be simply like answering the phones and not having to sell at all. Where it really takes a concerted effort is when you have an underperforming team, and to be able to isolate and highlight the benefits of coming to a game outside of the fact that the team may be rebuilding or in some form or fashion not necessarily doing what it is they'd like to do. The Philadelphia 76ers, for example, have a huge sales staff. It's around 75 or so people that are actually on the phones in the different departments that they have: group sales, individual season ticket sales. They have an inside sales team, then a premium sales. I mean, so you have several different divisions within that who are all working to fill that stadium every single night, just like a hotel would. If it goes unused, it goes unsold. And so you have this need for more and more salespeople and more training to be able to isolate and to handle those objections that come up about the team performance and everything else beyond the stars that they want to come and see. So it's an interesting balance with clubs to be able to afford to do this. And I say afford, it really becomes a mindset of how do they value their people enough to be able to invest in them, just like they invest in their athletes.
So let's bring it back again. So you've been gradually incorporating AI into your training. Okay. So where are you using it, and why gradually and not going all in?
Well, it's a matter of time, really, more than anything else. We have really good programs right now that we're repurposing and redoing because it's time we do that. AI is helping us quite a bit with some of those tools that allow us to be able to use talking heads or literally just a voiceover that it doesn't require us to be able to be the ones that are actually doing that. And so, we're finding, and we're doing it very slowly. I got to tell you, we're not the early adopters and just all in on AI just yet, but we're gradually getting there little by little in being able to update the programs that we have to be able to suit today's consumers and the kinds of problems that we're having today versus when those were created 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. So do you have any examples of how you've used it? I mean, you talked about talking heads, so talk us a little bit about what you've been doing there.
Yeah, it's interesting. What we found is that the combination of when we start a module, for example, we will do the first of 4 videos with a talking head. So, and usually it's me because of my radio background. I'm kind of the de facto guy that we turn to be able to do some of these. But the corresponding videos in that modules, say videos 2, 3, and 4, are not done with a talking head, but with simply slides and some examples of things that we're doing. So I don't put myself on camera until just the very first one. So they know who the voice is in the module. They just hear it rather than see me in modules in the segments 2, 3, and 4 of each week. We have found that to be the most, and we don't have a lot of statistics for this, but we found that with this philosophy, we have people that have had longer watch times, better adoption, and more complete understanding of the material. So that's what we're going to continue to use.
Okay. That's good. So are you seeing technology and AI affect other people you've been working with? Like, have you seen anything else that's made you go, oh, that's interesting, or oh, that's going to be interesting in a few years? Is there anything that you've been noticing?
Well, yes. And what's fascinating to me is that in many organizations at the legal level, many people are putting a lot of faith and a lot of budget toward tech. And it has more to do with the quality of leads that they're using or finding versus the ability they have to be able to address that. There are a couple of things that are happening. Bots like, there's the AI is using things to be able to email people and generate more quality leads for the staffs that they have. But they still need to be able to have the skills to be able to handle those leads. And it becomes more of a challenge for them to be able to justify training. They said, look, you need to train your people because you've already invested in enhancing the leads that you're getting. You don't want to leave those on the table and do a bad job with leads that you've already invested more in. There are bots that are from companies like Conversica who are actually doing conversations with people, generating their interest in season tickets. And they say, hey, can we have someone call you to be able to talk to you about those? And there are very sophisticated bots out there now that can have a conversation with a potential fan to be able to do that. And so that's being able to enhance that experience. But what isn't able to be enhanced, and we've talked about this a bit at the onset, Andy, is that there's still people involved. This is a people industry. And most teams favor a relationship with the people they work with versus a bot or something else that can be very standoffish, especially to fans 50 and older. There is a real affinity that they have because they do want to churn their fans a bit. They want younger fans. And that is one of the hallmarks of sports right now is the challenge they have is bringing younger people into the fold. Because they're engaged in other activities. Video games were not as big as they today as they were 20 years ago. There's many other things that are challenging them in terms of their time and attention. And so there's so many other things that are coming at them. The challenge that we all have as we go to this is AI is really sexy right now. It's such an awesome new tool to be able to do a million different things with. But what it comes down to is what is the relationship with your team? And can they say they have someone on their side that is kind of their guy or their gal that they can talk to if they have a problem with parking or if they have some other additional seats that they need for the game or need to change out their seats? AI can only do so much to be able to enhance the sales experience. But as far as the fan experience goes, AI can do very little to be able to make that better. And so there's still training that's going to need to be involved, especially if a team wants that relationship with their fans.
And so, I mean, you're right. I mean, it kind of it crosses over into a number of conversations we've had, and what we're seeing anyway in the world, I suppose, a little bit is the adoption of AI is in many ways extremely welcome in the sense of it can streamline, it can find efficiencies for people, it can do certain things which will just make your life a lot easier. But if we use AI to just completely replace the human element, then we're on the wrong track. And we should be wary of organizations that are doing that or adopting that methodology. But what we are seeing, that is happening, we know that. But what I've found to be more heartening, I suppose, is there are a lot of organizations and just people generally where, for example, I use AI a lot in my work, I have to. But it's at the benefit of being able to help other humans. And so I then am able to do more with less to a certain extent, because I'm using the tools to enable me to then to help somebody else in some way, whether that's through training or whether that's through learning or whether that's through development or whether that's just through good communication. And so I suppose with these organizations, my worry, I suppose, when it comes to some of the, again, I might be wrong on this one, Bill, but my worries with some of these large corporate organizations where the dollar or the pound is more important than the person is that, let's take the NFL as an example. Good organizations in the NFL tend to make good decisions, and they tend to be, you can see it in the way that they go about their coaching. You see it in the way they go about recruiting. They go away, they're smart, they think about it. There's an organizational approach. Everyone fits into the culture. And then you see ones that are just like consistently making bad decisions, consistently, and they are making billions and billions of dollars doing it. But and so my worries say, like, and I feel sort of apologies to people listening to this who aren't sports fans or US sports fans, but take for example the New York Jets, who are just the epitome of an organization that consistently seems to make bad decisions in a sporting perspective. I could easily see them do something where they just used AI, throw lots of money at AI to kind of almost create a kind of replace the human element, and then suddenly people are just like, I don't have a human connection with anyone at the New York Jets because I don't speak to anybody in sales. I don't get through to anybody. When I get to the stadium, I literally put my thing into a machine. It reads it. I then get sent to my seat. There might be someone there who's helping with ticket, who can direct me. And then I sit down in my seat. I need my food, but there's something that's ordered that I can order, and I don't need actually to speak to anybody. I then leave. Then I leave my seat, and I might speak to a couple of people around me and just boo the team as per, and then I'll leave. And actually, I've not really encountered anything to do with the New York Jets in terms of a person, a culture, an element of anything, apart from what I've just described. Now, that's not unrealistic in terms of what I've just described there.
No, it's not.
Is that fair?
Yeah, it is. I don't think that any team will go to that degree to be able to streamline some things, but I can see a team like the Jets or someone else that is struggling and has struggled mightily for quite a while to be able to look at that efficiency and say, gosh, then I don't have to deal with people problems, and I don't have to deal with, people that are late for work or just don't show up. And, there's all sorts of problems that go away when people are not there. But you have a whole nother set of problems to have to deal with, and that's fan retention. Does this fan experience match up to the kinds of things that are available in that market that people really enjoy? And I think if you're going to be competitive in terms of a team or any sort of business, I think you have to look at the experience as a customer, whether you're a sports team or a car manufacturer or whoever you are. You have to look at the overall experience and say, where is it that we have choke points? Where are those places in which we're not doing really well? And decide individually, can AI or some other individual technology help us in that and help our people to do a better job of that? And I think too many people jump into technology thinking it will solve all their people problems because now they don't have people there anymore. But you have an entirely different set of problems once you go too far into the realm of AI and tech to be able to do the things that those humans used to do. I think we have to maintain that balance, and it's still being decided right now and maybe for the next several years.
Yeah, very much so. So whilst that's still happening there, so in terms of that's just like how people should be balancing their approach in technology and AI adoption. So what's your thinking process then over the next, few years in terms of how you expand this model that you've talked about using technology, using AI? How can you see how you're going to move that model along to fit with what's happening in the world?
Well, it's fascinating you ask, Andy, because what we're looking at now is how we can train some of those teams on the technology that currently exists to make them better. So
Hmm.
it's not, I'm not talking about us using the technology. It's us learning the tech, finding out what the best model is and the best fit for teams going forward, and actually using that and training that as part of our curriculum. For example, we've found that by and large, and this is not a slam on our educational system per se, but we have people that don't write very well, that write emails that are rambling, that are single paragraphs, that should be 4 paragraphs, and they're horrible. And to think that we're having teams, individuals write those emails to these professionals who are season ticket holders or partial plan holders, it can be just gut wrenching to see all of the mistakes and the grammatical things that are going on. AI can help clean that up almost instantly to be able to help them, not necessarily help them learn how to write, because I think that ship may have sailed, but we can at least get them better at sending out what looks like a professional email so that they understand what it should look like and how it should sound. And so I think AI applying in that case for better communication with our fans is really an advancement that I'm championing now moving forward, because I think that is one of the single best applications we can use to be able to get better acquainted with our fans.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, you don't want communication coming from an organization, from somebody who represents the organization who doesn't know how to spell properly or
It's
can't
dreadful.
write a sentence properly. I mean,
Yeah,
that's pretty bad, representation of your organization. Um, I'm going to push back a little bit on this one, Bill, if you don't mind,
please.
because I agree. Obviously, you can you could type something in uh, to a tool. The AI can then have an AI response, which will read it, rewrite it, make it sound, and then you can click send. It's like, there we go. I've set it up, um, which is what's happening anyway, right? We know this is happening. But are we then? Because you say, the school system, the education system, uh, not addressing these things, and then we're just letting technology sort of just go, I'll be all right. Don't worry about it. I'll deal with it for you. The person never actually addresses some of those basic fundamentals. And technology just goes, move on. Uh, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I
I
think
know.
it's a mixed bag, and I totally get where you're going, Andy. Would it be better for us to be able to actually take, in our case in the States, an English class so that you understand how to effectively write certain things? And the answer is yes. If I'm having trouble trying to get budget from a team to be able to get them to help sell, imagine the additional budget that we need to actually have their people trained in English.
Oh, you don't get me started, Bill. Yeah, I mean, we had the same thing in the UK. Like we've had basic skills problems in the UK for a number of years, and we've had the further education system, which is badly funded anyway, having to try and address it when young adults come into the system and into the workplace. They want to do some further learning, and the government goes, "Well, we'll give you some money to learn to read and write properly," but they don't want to do it. They get scared. The walls come up. Don't even get them started on maths. Suddenly it's like, oh no, no. And so it's a hard thing to overcome when you've had a difficult school experience to then
Indeed.
take
And,
that into your workplace and then
and let's talk
expect
about
to.
technology just a little bit. In my training work, these are the things that they use, but they don't use them to talk. They use them with their thumbs.
Mm,
And so the art of communication, being able to talk to people and effectively give them a picture of what it would be like to own season seats or a partial plan of some sort is a real challenge for many young people coming out of school, because they haven't had the communication experience one-on-one or to use the phone to be able to do that at all. And so I can help in that regard. And that's where we really take the training, is the words to use that you then can customize to make it sound like you. But here's the fundamental root of what needs to be communicated. And then to take that and to have them feel really comfortable with using that rather than scripting them, because you can actually hear that on the other end, that somebody's reading from a script.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
be
yeah.
able to have it more comfortable and have it be a conversation rather than simply an exchange of money for tickets.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Okay. Now you've been quite critical about how some organizations treat training, box ticking potentially, no consistency, success is not built upon budgets without strategic intent, which I think is fair. What are they getting fundamentally wrong then? Just give us some key core elements around that.
Well, I think if it starts at the training or the hiring side, with being able to hire those individuals who have some of the necessary core components that you're looking for, like being able to use the English language properly and be able to communicate with others in that right direction. You need to train less if you hire properly. Now, for some, they say, well, we'll just use all of our money on hiring and we'll hire the best people so we won't need training. Well, that's a bit short-sighted as well, because every single team has its nuances that others have found successful that we're going to try to incorporate. And so you have this kind of push back and forth between HR and training. And typically HR is who develops that training. But in sports, it's not the HR department most often. It's the ticket sales managers and VPs of sales who actually make those decisions. And so they have to make this conscious decision of, do we hire the best people and pay them a little bit more and not bring a trainer in, which is more difficult from an HR perspective to find that diamond in the rough? Or do we take a shot on 10 or 12 brand new people who may or may not necessarily fill the bill, but we can bring in a trainer and bring them up and actually grow them from within? I work with teams that mainly have that second model in mind. And you make some mistakes along the way. There are some people that just find out that it's not as sexy as it once sounded, that you don't get to meet your favorite star as he comes out of the limo. That's not the gig. And it's a sales job, much like any other job in selling appliances or cars or whatever you might have. But fundamentally, it comes down to the talent that's available and the willingness that a team has to invest in that talent for the long term. And knowing that 17 months is the average that people stay, many conservative leaders will look at that and say, they're going to leave anyway, let's get the most out of them and squeeze as much as we can until we have the next batch of 10 or 12 that come in. And it's very short-sighted. And frankly, it's added to the detriment of mental health with the people that are actually doing that, because you're setting themselves up for failure if you don't train them properly.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. So if there was an L&D leader listening to what you've been saying, and thinking, or even some of these organizations, let's say you're talking to some of these organizations that you've been working with, if they were thinking, what we need to change how we approach our learning, what's the first thing you would advise that they do?
I would, first of all, take some sort of assessment with your people and decide, who has the most skills in their particular, some rubric that you might choose to say, who needs the most help? And really look at your staff and say, do I have the right people on the bus? Are these the people that can bring us to the next level? Often, if you have a very familial sort of organization that likes to, bring their people in and keep them for a long period of time, sometimes we fire too late. And we don't hire, we don't give people the option to go seek other employment because there's just not a good fit. So we keep them along perhaps for reasons of mercy, or for whatever reason it is, because it's more comfortable for somebody to be able to, nurse someone along versus finding somebody else. But I think, more than anything else, I would assess what you have today. I would ask others in your industry, who have you used successfully to be able to enhance your team? And don't go to competitors necessarily, but others that have similar businesses to yours. Find out what they do, and then sit down and say, would there be budget to be able to do this? And if we apply budget in that direction, what sort of return can I expect, or should I expect, if I were to be able to put it in that direction? And then budget accordingly. I think all too often we put a sales manager in place and we say, okay, well, that's part of your job, is the training side. And that's not their role. Their job is not to train. It shouldn't be, at least, because they have many, many, many hats. And the training ought to be done by a professional, somebody who actually knows adult learning techniques and can apply those in ways that stick. So that's what I would say to do that. Assess, ask others, and then make a move forward with budget that will support what it is you're wanting to accomplish.
Absolutely. So obviously 25 years of training, the world changing quickly, rapidly. What do you see happening in your space fundamentally in the next 2 to 3, 5 years that we should be thinking of?
Well, I think within the training space, I think there will be more and more development of critical thinking skills that AI will do. I think AI will make lousy salespeople of a lot of us if we let it. And I think the application of AI needs to be channeled so that it allows for better, more critical thinking. The days of the how-to book, I just heard this just this week. The how-to books can be all written by AI. How to do something, how to fix a wheel on a car, how to repair a computer, whatever that happens to be. But the learning that's going to be going on in the next 2 to 3 years be how to think through this problem, to allow someone to be able to use their brain to be able to bring them to that next logical conclusion, rather than the how-tos. That's, I think, the application that AI needs to be able to move more toward, and I think will help companies in the future, is how to think better so that they can anticipate needs. They can, you do a lot of other things with AI, but when you're really getting down to it, is I think that AI can help us be better human thinkers if we apply it properly. I guess that's the way I'd say it.
I think that's the key there. If we apply it properly.
Yes.
That's the crux, though, isn't it? It's how humans take that part forward. And in terms of any kind of, the way that you're seeing things have changed over the last 25 years and what will happen in the next few years, is there anything in terms of technology or that you are excited about or wary about?
I try to keep up with as much of it as I can, but frankly, Andy, I have so mind boggled in some of the things that I see happening. Moore's law seems to be more and more true with regard to all of these tools and opportunities that are coming in. So it's like a fire hose, and I'm truly having a hard time getting my head around some of them, because I end up seeing some of them as big sales pitches rather than simply a methodology that they can describe in a few words. And so I'm having a challenge myself deciding which of these new technologies are really going to be changing things and which are simply creating a company to be merged with somebody else, and then there are going to be some other elements. So the application of AI, the application of the work that it churns out, still needs to be done with a human being, because that's where relationship happens. And that's been my niche for a very long time, is how to build relationships with fans so they become those raving supporters of yours wherever they happen to be. And I don't think AI is getting to that point where raving supporters are going to be created from them, that it will ultimately be the communication levels and the ability of the people inside that office to be able to translate what needs to be translated in terms of that fan experience to the fans. And I think that humans are the only ones that are really capable of doing that currently. Can they be better in 2 or 3 years with AI? We'll have to wait and see, but there will still be a spot for humans. So if anybody's worried about being replaced in a customer service role or perhaps in a sales role, just be really good at reaching out to people and gain the relationships that are necessary, the things that AI can't do, and that will cement your job.
It's interesting you said all that, because it's kind of leans again into a lot of the things that we've been thinking about, in terms of our particular company. And that, obviously, I'm Open Elms is an educational technology company. We build solutions for organizations around learning and development and technology, but even from our perspective, whilst we're trying to, everything we've ever done is that it's not to replace humans, it's to enable humans to do things in a better way, or to learn in a more interesting way, or to adopt different ways to help them. But one of the things that I'm always really passionate about now is that the future now really is it's about partnerships. It's about the human element that you can't replace. Is that companies can't. There's no point just buying, as you say. There's no point. There's a myriad of solutions out there. There's a myriad of kind of like technological advancements. It's really hard to actually navigate a lot of them because there's just so many. And so I think what we're seeing with a lot of organizations that we're speaking to is that they're exactly the same. Everything you're experiencing as an individual is what's happening at corporate level. It's like, where do we start? There's so much. And that's why I think it's important that organizations start thinking about a partnership approach, instead of just going, I'm going to buy this solution and then we're tied into a contract for the next 2, 3, 5 years. Partnering with people and partnering with organizations that are passionate about people development, solution focused, listening, applying, all of these things where you become part of the ecosystem, part of the culture. That's a more powerful model moving forward, because it allows you to adopt technology, it allows you to adopt AI, and allows you to adopt different models of learning, whether it be the model that you're proposing or other ones as well. But it's not saying, right, well, that's it, then we're tied into that. We're tied into a partnership that allows us to develop with you, develop your people with you, and all those kind of things. That's where at the moment, I think that's what I'm sort of grappling with a lot more now, I think, is where I think we're seeing it go. So it's just leaning a little bit into what you're saying there, really.
No question. The difference between a vendor and a partner is night and day, and be able to work with people that you trust enough to become a partner is vital, I think, to not only your ongoing success, but theirs, because they can count on you being there long term, just as you can count on them being there long term, which is necessary. If you're complementary to one another, it's necessary for both of your survivals.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we draw this to a close, Bill, I asked this to everybody. So if there's one thing that if people were listening to this today and listening to the things you've been saying, like what's the one thing that you'd like someone to take away from what you've been saying today?
Well, I think that although professional sports is really sexy, they end up having some of the same maladies and same challenges each of you have. What you see on the pitch or wherever else you're watching for sports, they have some of the same challenges internally as you do. And oddly enough, you may be more advanced in terms of what you're doing than they are in being able to do what they do, and hopefully what they do best, and that's to fill the stands and to make it a great experience for everyone that's there. So take heart in knowing that even the very best and most visible organizations like sports teams still have those same challenges you do, and take away what you've learned here and do the very best you can with what you have within your industry, but invest in your people. AI is a wonderful thing, but it does not replace the human touch that creates relationship.
Perfect. Thank you, Bill.
It has been my honor here to be with you, Andy. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Not at all. My pleasure.